Welcome everyone to once again another episode of Op Watch. There's 3 games left in CF Montreal season, 1 home game, but before that, they're headed off to Charlotte to face off against one of the hottest teams in MLS. With me to break down the opposition is Nic Finelli from the Charlotte FC podcast and Logan Meyer from the Crowncast. Nick, Logan, thank you so much for stopping by. How you guys doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, super excited to be here.
Now, Charlotte and Montreal faced off a couple months ago in April. It's been a while now. A lot has happened since then. But what were maybe some of your first impressions of this Montreal side? When the two teams faced off.
Nick, you want to field this one first?
Yeah, I'll go first. So I would say this was going into, because Charlotte has never really won at all in Canada. This was looked at as, here's an opportunity, here's a chance. They had just beaten Nashville, and this was an opportunity to go in and say, hey, we could take a road game and build that confidence, because there's always been this stigma up until this year that Charlotte could not win on the road. And this was a good step, and getting that early goal and getting something early on the road, I think helped propel them to believe in themselves on the road. So I think it was, we look back at it and I didn't know, but this was probably a good marker for them to be like, okay, we can do this year. We can win, even though, Montreal was not necessarily considered the top teams in the league, but winning on the road, no matter what and where, is important.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm going to echo the statement that winning on the road at that point in time was such a big deal. I think the existence of Prince Owusu is someone who has come to Charlotte FC in the past and has looked like an incredibly threatening player. I think anyone who follows Montreal will agree with that statement. And I was specifically worried about him. I was specifically worried about the way, at the time, a little bit of a rough defense for Charlotte FC, despite the fact that that's not what they're known for now or previously, because at the time we were having some bumps in that, would handle a strong physical player like that. To come away with the 1-goal win felt great for Charlotte. And obviously now the goal is to do it again. Sorry for the Montreal fans, but the Charlotte FC people, also are going to come here to try and win.
And Prince is having an exceptional year this year too, almost a record-setting year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's managed to turn it around. It's actually one of the best debut seasons for a CF Montreal striker. So, you try and find the positives where you can in a season like this, and he's definitely one of them. But, back to Charlotte, that win, was followed up with, I'm looking here, with a win against San Diego, and then a pretty rough 2 months where, you guys struggled to find wins. And then all of a sudden in July, something just happened, right? You guys went on a 10-game unbeaten run, 9 wins in a row in MLS. You had your little pause for the Leagues Cup, but in MLS, you guys were untouchable. Can you talk about that dip in form, and then what was maybe the catalyst, Logan, if you could touch on what turned it around, and how was it such a drastic 180?
Yeah, no, actually, the story is really good. It's a shame that, to tell the whole story would be hours, but the simple fact of the matter was, at the time, Charlotte FC was going through a transition. Specifically, there were some players who looked like they were on the way out / on the way out. And there was a lot of question marks as to how some older players in the squad were going to fit into the team for their future. The big one is Tim Ream. Tim Ream moves into the middle of the pitch. And in the beginning of the year, we all had a lot of questions about how Tim Ream would handle that pace on the outside. There were some struggles. Alongside of those struggles, some undue weight got put on what last year was a great center back pairing of Andrew Privet and Adil Samalanda. And I think that we haven't found the ceiling of Andrew Privet, but what we found was that the added weight was a little bit much for him at the time. He's still got to develop into quite that higher level of center back. And we just saw a lot of effectively falling apart on the left, a lot of times where the ball could have gone either way, right? Could have hit the post and gone out, unfortunately, at the post and went to another player. There was really a run of a lot of games that you look back at and you go, it's one individual error, or it's 10 minutes of real trouble that Charlotte FC wasn't able to push through and gave up those matches. I think what we saw as the games turned around in July was not that Charlotte became a defensive, impenetrable, all-scoring unit, but instead what they found was solidity. And then they had big players, Adil Simalanda, Christian Kalina, Tim Ream, Ashley Westwood, the inclusion and the development of Adon Toklamati, who took these games that were tight and said, no, by force of will, we're making them go Charlotte's way. And I really think those sort of individual big key players, obviously I didn't name some of them, are a lot of the reason for why that streak went from so low to so high.
Now, Nick, if you could maybe, touch on, such a big difference in obviously results. Sometimes in MLS doesn't necessarily mean a difference in performances, but, the small things. Is this kind of form sustainable? And is this maybe, is this, 9 games is no longer a flash in the pan, but is this really just the games going your way? Or is this something that could have been happening all season long with the right pieces in the right places?
I don't know if it was the right pieces in the right places. I think it was more of this squad really just started to gel, and it takes a while. You got Wilfred Zaha just coming in. You had the backline issues with injuries, which we got right after the Montreal game. We got Jaquil Marshall-Rutty from Montreal to help with that, and he's continuing to grow. He's not necessarily the piece I think that everybody wanted to have moving forward with this, but definitely somebody to move forward in the future, but not necessarily the right now. But he's been getting serviceable minutes and been really helpful and had some really bright spots. But I think it's just more of the fact that everybody learned what their roles are and what each other does. Because when a team plays fast and when a team is able to do things without even thinking about it, that's when they start to show better. And I think that's what happened with Charlotte is they just didn't have to be like, oh, you're going to go here when I do this, or you're going to make this run. That was just instinctive where it wasn't before. It just took that time.
Now, I want to ask you guys a bit about Jaquil Marshall-Rutty is someone that probably the player that Montreal fans are the most invested in your squad for good reason. He is a Montreal player on loan. What was your initial reaction? You kind of mentioned a bit before, but what was your initial reaction to the actual news that he was coming? And, what do you think his ceiling is? Because coming in from Toronto, he had a lot of hype. And, when Montreal spent $1.5 million in GAM on to bring him over, and didn't necessarily work out the way it was supposed to or the way it was expected. And the loan was seen as maybe something to kind of, get his form back. Has he found his form back, and or have the minutes just been, he's been there and doing his job?
I'm happy to jump on this one, Nick. As far as Jaquil Marshall-Rutty is concerned, he is a challenging player for me to address because I see the highest of high ceiling in him. And also as someone who goes through the data and, who really watches these games very closely, I also see some fatal flaws. That's not surprising with a young player, especially not a young player out on the wing, very attacking. Some of the things that I think are world class about him is that at a very young age, he's got no fear on the ball. He wants to go out. He wants to show who he is. He wants to impose himself on the pitch, and that's what the best players do. So when you're already doing that at his age, it means mentally he's in the right spot. He does actually have some really close technical control that I really enjoy seeing on the pitch. And his passing range is okay. Really, the big question mark I have for him is not just defensively because he spends so much time up the pitch, but whenever there seems to be a long engagement, whenever the defense has to be working hard for quite a bit of time, he has a tendency to shut off. He has a tendency to sort of, I don't want to say pick daisies, but look up the pitch a little bit and go, man, I'd really like to be carrying the ball up that way. But unfortunately, the ball is going back in. And that's cost Charlotte a couple of points this season. It's cost Charlotte a couple of big goals this season. This is a player who I look at and I say, truly, I actually believe the ceiling is incredibly high on this player. Based on where he is now compared to developmentals of fullbacks that I've seen in the past, he does look to be tracking towards that more aggressive attacking sort of back five fullback. But in 3 years, if he manages to sort of become an adult and turn on that, I'm always there for the play, no matter what it is, get ready. He could be really, really, really fun to watch.
Now, Nick, one thing I wanted to ask you about specifically Marshall, because I find it interesting that that's kind of the assessment, given that it was almost the other way around when he was playing wingback in Montreal in a back five. He seemed so concerned with shoring up the defensive side of the ball that he didn't really let his technical quality shine through. Do you think that this change of scenery has maybe changed the way that he's approaching his game?
Yeah. Yeah, obviously, I think anytime you have a different role on a club and what you're supposed to do, I mean, the big difference from being in a back five to a back four, that right there all of a sudden tells you you're going to be paying attention to different things, especially, not on ball side. Like what are you having to watch or
Mhm.
monitor? And I feel like that has definitely changed for him, and he seems pretty happy in his role and understanding. And I know Dean Smith, the manager, tries to make things simpler for those folks to know, like, hey, this is what you do when you go here, and then when you're not, this is all you have to do, just to make it easier for them to focus on what their job is and what they need based on the skills that he wants them to use.
Mhm.
Logan, would you add anything else to that?
No, I mean, I would agree with you. I think that there's probably some coaching elements involved. Believe it or not, these guys all have coaches. Those people get paid a lot of money and work really hard to help these players get better. I suspect that if there was a loan move, you're probably seeing a shock effect. You're probably seeing a player who thought he was doing it correctly. And then when the loan move came through, he sort of sat down with the coaches and the coaches said, this is what we need from you. We need you to be free flowing going forward. If you're going to come back to Montreal and you're in a back five system, you have to be able to do this. And it would not surprise me if he came to Charlotte FC with the mentality that was from day one. Not that I'm going to forget about defending entirely, but defending is now my tertiary thought. And that happens. But
Now, has he only really been in a fullback position, or has he had the chance to play up on the wing now? Because Montreal doesn't play in a five back anymore. They switched with the departure of the coach. They've switched to a four back system now. Do you think he'd be better suited to get some running minutes at on the wing, or is it really just he has to kind of buckle down and nail the fullback position?
Nick, I'm happy to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah,
I might be controversial.
It's probably I think he needs to nail that defensive position. I think the way that Charlotte plays with the kind of inverted back line, so one of the outside backs is playing up more depending on the run of play, but I feel like of course he has to run a lot, but he has to shore up that, and I think that's kind of going back to the things that he needs improvement on is off ball when there's sustained things happening and he's basically retreating back in transition, or there's something he is missing being back as part of that whole group, as opposed to like worrying about his one player. Like he might have to monitor and think about, well, if they're covering here, I need to do this, and I don't know if that's come yet for him. That's what I see.
That's really interesting. I think the way you describe your back line kind of reminds me a bit about what Marco Donadel is looking from his back line. So if he gets that interim tag removed and he becomes a full-fledged coach, I'd be curious to see just how much Jaquil Marshruti can kind of integrate into the group if he comes back from loan. Again, it's a whole lot of hypotheticals before next season, but we've got a game to focus on now. Let's hop straight into the matchup. Logan, where on the pitch do you think the game is going to be decided, and who do you expect from the Charlotte side to really influence the game?
So mathematically, I have to say Christian Kalina. So much of the way that Charlotte FC has gone about its winning streak is by Christian Kalina just saying, I'm shutting this down.
Mhm.
This goal is not open for business. And you cannot see a player go through that level of form and not comment on it. Outside of Christian Kalina, because I think goalkeepers are always important, it's going to be the sort of middle lane of the pitch. And whoever is covering that for Charlotte FC in this particular moment. So whether that's Jabril Diani, who is like a really powerful, really physical athlete, whether that is Adilson Malanda in this case, whether that's Tim Ream, I do think that when I look at this match, I see one really, really dangerous player. And I think Charlotte FC will have to sort of juggle how they deal with Prince. And each of those people is going to have a role. handoff of how they deal with him, of how they really try and keep him out of the match is, in my opinion, going to be the number one element for at least how Charlotte approaches this game defensively.
Nick, what do you think?
I think a lot of what Logan says is true, especially in the middle of the pitch and watching out for Prince. But I also feel like you have to look at the front three, and they need to basically put more pressure on your defense in order so that so that Montreal doesn't have those open spots to get it to Prince and put themselves in positions where he could be dangerous. And I think that's part of that's going to be the front line putting a lot of pressure and carrying the ball and not just having like a quick burst, like having a little possession in that final third.
Now, I mentioned, we talked a bit about, some of these really important players in the midfield to kind of hold the game down. You mentioned the attackers. One player I kind of want to talk about, we mentioned at the top of the episode, was Pep Biel, who I'm a huge fan of. And he was genuinely on like an MVP kind of pace at the beginning of the season with the way he was producing. He's kind of tapered off a little bit now. He went through a span of injury, if I'm not mistaken. How important is it for him to get back up and running, especially with the playoffs looming?
So important. It's one of those where like you put it at the very top of the list. I think there are 5 different reasons why the story of Pep Biel is critical in this match. He is the one who obviously got the goal in the last match against Montreal. But more than that, I think that if a team is going to maintain a high standard, you need kind of storylines in the season to keep the players invested, to keep fans invested, to keep everybody like there and mentally connected. Seasons are really long. And I think that this is a chance for Pep Biel, if he can come back in, if he's fully healthy, to sort of reestablish himself in the team. And probably the ideal outcome for Charlotte is that Pep Biel gets a goal and an assist, because then Charlotte can go on with hey, great, Pep's back. Everybody re-hype the levels back up after the last sort of story of Charlotte going on the winning run, and take it from there. He's critical, I think.
Yeah, I want to add a little bit to that. So not only is Pep critical, but he takes them to a different level. And they learned how to win without him. And I think that was crucial, because, you might not have players. You might have a player that doesn't have a good match. So how do you win without him? I think that was good during the streak for them to have. But in order for them to be at this elite level, to be able to win this MLS Cup, Pep needs to show up, just like Logan said, get a goal and assist and be a part of that offense and be a part of making things happen and opportunities. And that's where he was so great. He's actually 50-50 for this match today or tomorrow. So we'll see how much play he gets.
Now, we talked a bit about Prince. We talked about how good of a season he's having. He's always a danger man. But besides him, where else on the pitch do you think the matchup may get a little bit complicated, right? Charlotte matches up very well against a team like this, especially going forward. But is there parts of the pitch where you think, okay, this is where Montreal may have a bit of a joy? This is where Montreal may be able to, be a bit more decisive in this game?
Go ahead, Logan. I know you probably broke this down already.
I have thoughts. I always do. I spend far too much time watching football.
No such thing as too much time.
So for me, sort of the 2 other areas of the pitch that I'm really paying attention to is I'm going to be watching Charlotte FC's left back position. It has stabilized quite a bit, but it is still the area where if this game starts going end to end, you still see the cover for that position being Tim Ream. Tim Ream has handled that marvelously. I don't have any real immediate worries about it, but any team that has speed and can move it to the outside, if they get caught in transition, Charlotte FC is probably most concerned about sort of the deep left open ball that transitions really quickly. The other part of the pitch is the attacking right for Charlotte FC. That battle will be a really interesting one. Kerwin Vargas is out there often, but if Pep Biel comes back, how he slots back in there, that is a place on the pitch that unfortunately Charlotte FC really needs to produce to do well. It is also a place on the pitch that Charlotte FC can kind of see flop, not play poorly or horribly, but not go out and spark fireworks. If that right side of the pitch is firing and can win that battle on Montreal's defensive left, then we're going to see Charlotte FC really, Adon Tokomati starts making the runs through the middle. All of a sudden, people are having to shift over, and then Wilfred Zaha gets left one-on-one. If that side of the pitch is kept quiet, then suddenly you say, game on Montreal. It's a little easier to keep Wilf out of the game, and there will be more transition opportunities.
Yeah, I think, honestly, an open game is probably what Montreal wants the most. I think they have a horrible time breaking down a low block, and I think open games are probably their best bet at getting any kind of points, even though it's still, something of a long shot. Nick, what about you? Where do you think the key to the games are? And where do you think maybe Charlotte is a bit more vulnerable on the pitch?
I think I agree a lot with what Logan said about just in that transition on that right side. But I also think just if Charlotte does not get something early, will they be patient enough to know that, they need to make something happen, then they want to have something happen. So I feel like an early goal that happens, whether it's a fluke, whether it's catching Charlotte off guard, might stumble Charlotte a little bit, especially after losing the last one. They might have some more question marks in their head, especially at home. So if there's something that happens that way, but as far as strategy, I feel like the mid block is going to do fine unless Montreal is able to play wide or shift in the run of play from one end to another. I don't see them really penetrating Charlotte's defense when they're set.
Yeah, Montreal is one of those rare teams that actually are doing better on the road than they are at home right now. Again, neither of them is particularly good, but we're talking about 16 points instead of 11 points at home or something. Before we end this, I got to get your score predictions, and I got to get your man of the match. So, Nick, who's your man of the match? What's the final score?
All right, I will say 3-1. Charlotte. We'll give Prince a goal so he can make it towards his records. Man of the match will be Pep Biel. He's going to get a even in a reserve role, he's going to get a goal and an assist.
Logan, what about you?
I think it's fair to say I'm biased, but I just see this match going into a 2-0. I think that there is not quite enough creative ability in Montreal right now to pull away Tim Ream and Adil Samawanda, and for them to then have a keeper like Christian Kalina behind them. I think Prince is going to have such an incredible job to do, and if he does get one, he will have earned it. The 2 goals, I think that there is going to be an element of an open game to this, and when it comes to open games, I think Adon Tokomati is just violently fast. He's really tricky. He's hard to hold on to. And then with Wilfred Zaha trying to get people on yellow cards every time he turns around, I do think chances are going to be made. So for me, this is a 0-2. I'm sorry, but I've got Charlotte FC for.
No hard feelings. That's kind of par for the course this season. So I don't think anyone's feelings are going to be getting hurt. I am a bit more on Nick's side. I think it's going to be 3-1. Whether it's Prince or Ivan Jaime, who just signed, he's had a half dozen chances, golden chances in his last 3 games. I think he's due for one, but I don't think it's enough. I actually think that, Logan, you talked about your concerns with the right side of the attack. I think that's where it's going to thrive, because Montreal, for better or for worse, that right side of the defense has been one of the only consistently good things this year. Mm-hmm. And that left side has been extremely streaky, especially on the road. So, if they end up rotating the squad and we get and you guys get some mismatches, I could see whether it's Pep Biel or Vargas on that side really having their way. Either way, though, I think that, Charlotte, I don't think Charlotte's dropping points. I'd be very surprised. I'm not going to complain, but I'd be very surprised. I think that's going to do it for our show. Thank you again, Nick, Logan. Thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you so much for talking Charlotte FC. Let the good people of Montreal, of Quebec, of Canada, let them know what you've got going on. Nick, Logan of Charlotte FC of the Crown Cast. Tell us where we can find you.
All right. So I'm at Charlotte FC podcast is CLTFC podcast on X, Instagram, all the things. And of course, we do audio and focus on interviews with people, even with the club, and not just players, but those who work around it. So we got a special thing on one of the communications coordinators who works to kind of drum up the whole idea of Charlotte. So that's our latest interview there. So check it out on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm going to take a brief second just to re-hype up Nick and the Charlotte FC podcast, because I think it's a little unusual that you get a competitive team podcast that people from Montreal might want to really go listen to. What Nick does, while it centers around Charlotte FC, is universal. These are the people that no one realizes makes all of these teams happen, and it's a really cool look into that world. So I'll re-hype up the Charlotte FC podcast.
That's awesome.
As for the Crowncast, the Crowncast specializes in advanced data and analytics and tactical breakdown. So actually, if you go and you try and listen to a Crowncast podcast, you do have to sign a waiver that says you don't coach for / advise for any other MLS teams. We get really into the weeds. That's a lie, by the way. I don't have that power. Okay. If I did, that would be amazing. But it is, if you love sort of the tactics of football and how this game came to be the beautiful mess that it is, because that's what it is, please give us a listen. Even if it's not Charlotte FC you love, you might find something you didn't know before.
That's awesome. Nick, Logan, again, thank you so much for stopping by. I hope it's going to be a good game. Season may be over for CF Montreal, but I hope that at least they go down swinging and at least give something entertaining. And all the best of luck for the rest of your season, because I know that, between 6th and 3rd, I think is like 1 point apart. So I hope you guys have an equally entertaining end to the season.
Yeah, we hope so too.
Yeah.
All right. And as always, may the best team win.